How are you? I am coming to you today with this week's Matchless Message. And you guys know we are in a series where we're talking about abundance and harmony. And so during this whole series, the plan was to teach on money, wealth building, and also love and health. And last week we took a pivot and talked about love. So if you missed that video, go back and watch it. Um, and the 2 weeks before that, we talked about money. But given everything that's going on in our nation right now, I wanted to spend this week talking about our health, and more specifically, our mental and emotional health. And um, I really sat down and wrote out my thoughts for this particular week's video, because last week was such a tumultuous week in America. We have several different crises that are currently going on. And it's very serious out here, whether it's just not only on social media, but in our own everyday lives. We're having serious conversations about where we're trying to go as a people, racially, and also as a people nationally. And I saw that for the very first time in America's history, all 50 states protested some of the issues that we have going on right now, as it relates to racial injustice. And so one of the things that I want you guys to know, I am in my car, but I am not driving. I'm sitting still, and I wanted to go ahead and film this video and to get these thoughts just off of my head. We're going to eventually get to the 5 ways that I manage both my mental and emotional health while staying committed to the cause of racial injustice. I believe that overall, our stories are so important when it comes to this topic, and I wanted to somehow merge our conversation about health with the reality of why do you need to take care of yourself in the midst of all that's going on, and even more specifically, those parts of our health that you cannot see. You cannot see your mental health, you cannot see your emotional health, but with all of the images, conversations, and I mean behaviors that we are seeing given the state of America, this conversation I think needs to be had. And I wanted to share with you guys how I'm managing both my mental health and my emotional health in the face of all of this unrest. So before we get to the first tip, I wanted to kind of weave my story throughout these tips so that you guys got a better understanding of why I am super aware that these things coexist, right? So, the first tip that I have for you when it comes to managing your mental and emotional health is to, one, give yourself permission to feel all of your emotions and to think all of your thoughts. So as you guys know, my background is not in psychiatry or anything like that. I am an attorney. And so I'm not giving advice clinically, as it relates to depression or whatever. This is just about self-care and also us moving forward in personal development. But one of the things I've noticed in my own experience is that one of the very first ways to protect your emotional and mental health is to give yourself permission to feel and think what you're feeling. Because with sensitive topics like this, and I don't care if you're watching this and you're a man or a woman, if you're white or you're black, you're Asian, you're American, non-American, when an issue touches us socially, it's easy to always think about what the next person may feel and how they're going to receive what I'm dealing with. And that is an important consideration. But before, a lot of people who are maybe people pleasers and stuff like that, before moving far into where everybody else is, the first thing you need to do is be steady in where you are. And so part of my story as it relates to all of the racial and civil unrest that we're feeling is I'm a black woman, right? I am connected to Black men in so many ways, Black men whom I love. These images are completely disturbing to my spirit, to my mind, to my families who, like, I'm like, they could have been any Black man that I know, and I would be dealing with the burden of a group of people who are not very sensitive to our humanity because of what we've been through as a country. And so, you know, I'm a wife and I'm also an attorney. And so for 3 years, I was a criminal defense attorney, and I represented the interests of mostly African American men in the justice system as a defense attorney. And, you know, the thing about our civil rights is that it goes far. Not only did I fight for it in our courtroom, and of course I had clients who were also, you know, Black women, white women. I had a few white men, but by far my clients were Black men. And I fought for our civil liberties in different ways, but this fight transcends, you know, anything that I feel like I've ever seen in my lifetime. And I believe that the generations that are coming behind us are also going to be dealing with this issue. We have to teach them how to be okay with where they are in a moment. And you can't teach that to other generations if you have not freed yourself to think and feel whatever it is you need to think and feel in a moment. Now, that does not mean you are reckless. That does not mean you go out and, you know, you do whatever you want to other races in retaliation. But this goes to the second point that I have when it comes to managing your emotional and your mental health in the face of a lot of civil unrest, is find a safe space to express yourself. So once you freed yourself to say, it's okay that I feel this way. It's okay that I feel helpless, that I feel, you know, angry, mad, frustrated, sad. It's okay. That's human. But the second stage is find a safe space to express these things. And so that may be your spiritual relationship. Maybe you pray and you talk to God. And if you have a very genuine faith, you know that you can take your feelings and your emotions to that particular place, and it's just a conversation between you and your creator. It may be you journaling. I know I've done a lot of journaling during this particular week, and last week I've done a lot of meditation so that whatever is embedded deeply on the inside of me can like surface and I can become aware of what I'm feeling. I talk to my mom and my close friends and my family about what's going on. I'm having conversations, hearing what they're doing, both on a local level in their own families, economically, because you can attack this issue in many ways. And I don't think you should be mad at anybody for how they need to address the problem. Hopefully you're doing more than going on social media acting up. Okay? Hopefully you are not so paralyzed that that's the only method that you're taking. But do what you feel like you need to do to address this issue and find a safe space to express yourself. The third thing I would say is I engage with social media at specific times, right? And it right now it's changing throughout the day depending on what else is going on with my schedule. If I have a business call, if I have a client call, sometimes I'm getting on social media at mid-morning, sometimes it's early morning, sometimes it's afternoon. But whatever it is, I only give it a certain amount of time per day before I'm checked out. And that also goes for the news. So really any form of media, not just social media. So that's my third tip, is engage with social media at specific times every day. And so for me, I do believe it's a good part to be active on social because we have amazing ideas and there's some people who are doing amazing work. I wouldn't have been able to, you know, give unless someone else had decided to put, you know, an event together or to put together, you know, something to pay homage to what we're dealing with in terms of paying out, you know, bailing out some of the protesters and everything that's going on. I wouldn't even know about it if it weren't for social. So I definitely check in on social. I screenshot, I post, I share my thoughts when I believe that it's relevant and that it is also, germane to, the office that I hold and the work that I can do. And so your voice matters, because I do believe when our children ask about 2020 and all that's going on, you want it recorded where you stood. And even if it's not social media, even if it's you sitting on a panel in your local community, like maybe you're not all about the hype. I have family members who, don't really engage in social, and that's not their place of active. That's not where they're active, but they are like, hey, is there a panel that I can sit on? Because I do want to talk to people face to face. There are so many options. Do that. But I would say, media wise, to protect your mental and your emotional health, engage at a specific time every day and log out. Check back into your real life and do something else, which kind of goes into the fourth part. So the third one was engage in social media daily at specific times. And then the fourth tip I have is to log off and check into your real life. Okay. Check into your real life, check into your body. Okay. Check into your kids, your whoever's living in your home. Check in with your family, because whatever you feel in a moment on social is very easy. It's easier to type that and then go on about your business. But what's more difficult is to, look at your white neighbor. Look at your white neighbor and understand that they're in the same world. So you guys being able to cross those media boundaries that can sometimes have us not knowing how to operate with each other in real life. When you talking to your neighbors who are walking their dogs, if you live in a mixed neighborhood, or, maybe you live with just African Americans, so it looks differently, but being able to stop and have a conversation with them, and be like, hey, how you doing? We're doing A, B, and C, or whatever else. And a lot of the individuals that I'm around who are white are not shying away from the topic. And so when you show up in your real life and you're having a dialogue to say, they're like, hey, what can I do? I have certain resources available for the people who are in my real life who are saying, Lindasha, I want to get better at being more aware of what privilege I have and how we can help African Americans. So I've been literally sending them or operating with them according to, hey, here are some resources that if you're in a place of privilege as it relates to race, this is what we're in need of from you. This is how you can truly advocate for a difference. When you're sitting in boardrooms and when you guys are deciding on who you're going to go with in terms of business and a budget, do you have people of color at the table? And do you have Black people of color at the table? Are you negotiating contracts, and are you negotiating in good faith when you are operating with these companies? Now, at the same time, the companies have to come to the table, understanding what your needs are and if they're able to actually get the work done. But there are people out here, and if you need connections and recommendations, I'm available. Okay, I'm available. If you're like, hey, we're shooting video, looking for a few people to work on this project, do you know any videographers, etc., etc. Those are practical ways that you can help rebalance the scales of justice, because that's what we're asking for, is that the scales are balanced. No one's, that they're balanced. And in this type of situation, when they've been unbalanced for so long, then yes, you may need reparations. You may need other things economically to bring a certain stability back in place. And that's important. Number 5 is my fifth tip is that I up my self-care and mental health habits. Okay. During times like this, I don't play about self-care. Right. A few days ago, I had an 8:30 a.m. call that went totally left. Okay, it went left. I understand emotions are high. I understand that people have a lot going on, but at the same time, disrespect because you have a lot going on emotionally is not the answer. So the call became a little more on the tense side. And when I got done, I was like, you know what, Lindasha, go for a run, go for a HIIT workout. And that's what I did. So if I try to, as quickly as possible, bounce back with something that is healthier for me than continuing on in, an irate emotional state when I have encountered people who may not, pay attention to their self-health and their mental health as much as I do. I make sure I don't want that energy taken with me. So I introduce myself to another energy. And that's about upping your self-care and your mental health habits. Recently, I've also been making flower arrangements. I don't even know where that's come from, but it's made me happy. I'm wearing flowers today, amen. And I bought a few new mindfulness magazines, and I am doing guided meditations daily. Guided meditations on different things. Some of them is just about being positive. Some of them is about, opening your emotions and expressing. But I have been doing guided meditations. And then I think I said 5, but I do have one more tip. I give to the causes that matter to me in some intentional and substantive way, and I do that according to my sphere of influence. One of my mentors when I was first a lawyer, she really, really, really helped me to what's the word? Get my emotional responses together for some of the issues you face as an attorney. She was so helpful with that. She was like, well, Lindasha, I understand that you responded that way. Here are a few other options. And I would always go to her office when something went down in court, or just a client, all kind of stuff, a PO, whoever, right? Because there were so many issues once you start the practice of law, and especially in certain areas. I was a trial attorney, so there were just problems everywhere. And she put up a post about being intentional in giving in her sphere of influence. And that's what she's able to do. She's a mom, she's an attorney. She owns her own business. She's a wife. And you just can't do it all, right? So when you give in your sphere of influence, you have to know that that's enough. That's enough. It's okay. You're going to make it. You know what I'm saying? There are so many people who are putting their energy and time and effort into this right now, and it's taking a collective effort. And if you've done all that you can do, rest. It is okay. Okay? You don't have to carry the weight of the world on your own shoulders. And I say that very humbly, because some of the attorneys, 3 of the attorneys who've taken on a lot of these cases, one of them, he is very well known here in Atlanta. And the weight that he and his firm are dealing with right now, as opposed to, some of the rest of us, there's somebody who is taking a load of this in a heavier way than you are. So be grateful that you can do your part, and then do your best not to be adding to all of the commotion, right? And recognize, I've done my part. I'm grateful that I can, and there's someone else taking on a heavier burden right now, and making sure that justice prevails and is we continuously fight for justice for the long run, because this is a long journey. The arrest and the charges are the beginning of the story. And so what I want to just end on this note, those are my six tips for you to go from broken to healed, continuing on your mental and your emotional health journey, even in the midst of racial and civil unrest, and especially if you're dealing with racial trauma. These are only self-care habits. Go to a licensed therapist and someone who can help you if your issues are deeper, or if you've been impacted by racism more deeply. You may need more people outside of this video or some of the things that I post to help you. But I want to say that I understand how deep this goes. I have been a victim of racism several times throughout my life. I responded differently. My first encounter with it seriously, I think I was about 16 or 17 at a movie theater. And all of us we remember that first time someone really came at you love-wise, and it was literally because of the color of your skin. And it's very, harmful, and it's tattooed on our brains. And just, for me, I've had such an opportunity to have my healing journey look differently than most, right? Meaning I've gone far into really understanding who I am, and visiting, my ancestors specifically came from Ghana. I did an ancestry test some years back and found out that, you know, the African enslaved people, either it was a great grandfather or great grandmother, they were in Ghana. And so I had the opportunity a few years ago to go to Ghana and go to the slave castles and just visit and hear the story from that end of how, you know, the people that I'm connected to endured complete and crazy atrocities. Slavery is nothing new. Racial slavery is nothing new in the world's history. It goes very far back. But right now, this is our history, and this is us living it as being a part of those victimized in this particular racial episode in the world's history. And it's not okay. You know, it's not okay for us to suffer in silence because we're impacted still hundreds of years later outside of the transatlantic slave trade. It's just not okay. You need to find safe spaces to deal with what you're dealing with and keep your strength together and keep living, because that is the best answer to all of this, is that we live and that we keep our joy, especially as Black men. If you're watching this, that you find a way to keep your joy and your happiness and honor also your struggle and say, I didn't get here by blinking and, you know, just some magical form. I fought through these tough issues and I'm strong enough to be a sounding board to the world now. And so it's okay to feel helpless sometimes. This is an enormous enemy. It's okay to feel overwhelmed. It's okay, right? But at the same time, I'm producing this video so that you can maybe come out of that space and look at, hey, I did do A, B, C, and D. That's what I have right now, and it is enough. Let me check into the other parts of my life and keep moving forward, because this fight is going to be with us our whole lives, okay? So I'm wishing you guys the best. I'm always praying for you guys. Love you very much, and I will talk to you later. All right, y'all. Bye.